Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we are focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLucio, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Drive On podcast. Today, my guest is Owoc. Karen is a clinical exercise physiologist at the VA in Palo Alto, California. She's also a weekly health contributor to KRON-TV in the San Francisco Bay Area, and also the author of the book, Athletes and Aprons, the Nutrition Playbook to Break 100. I'm really happy to have her on today because not only does she work with the VA with a number of veterans out there in the San Francisco area, she also is on a mission to really help people improve their health and live a better, healthier life, adding quality to the years of our life, not just the quantity. So welcome to the show, Karen. I'm glad to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the listeners,
thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. For the listeners who may not be in the Bay Area, who maybe aren't familiar with you, maybe haven't seen you on television, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, just kind of who you are?
So as you mentioned, I'm a clinical exercise physiologist. I specialize in cardiopulmonary rehab. So my patients all have had some type of cardiac event, or I'd say a majority of them have COPD, so emphysema, and that's with the VA. I've also worked, as you mentioned, on KRON. So those segments are about 6-7 minutes that we do every Sunday. And it is can be seen live no matter where you are. So if you ever want to tune in to KRON-4, and covering all aspects of health, from health, exercise, nutrition, longevity, all aspects. And taking what I do is take, some science-based study or whatever is current and currently interest, where people are interested in. I pare that down into 6 minutes.
That seems like a tough thing to do, is to take some of these big topics and pare them down to the short segments that you have on the television for just a brief period of time, but also making it useful so that the viewers are able to walk away with something that they can use in their own life, right?
Right. I always try to have some type of takeaway at the end, so there, something positive and that people can do.
Yeah, and so with your work at the VA, you mentioned that you deal with people who have had a number of cardiac issues and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I have to imagine some of these health topics that you talk about on TV also bleed over into the work that you do at the VA. Is that right?
Absolutely, because we cover. I also didn't mention stress management too, which a lot of our veterans have that continue. Most of my veterans are Vietnam combat vets, so they still are suffering from PTSD and that trauma. One of the interesting things about veterans and is that just being a veteran, having veteran status is a risk factor for heart disease. The stress, the trauma, and that it's continuous. It doesn't really stop once you leave. All right, is that true?
That's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I always said, we should have, whenever you fill out a questionnaire, do you have high blood pressure? Do you have a history of blah, blah, blah? It should also have veteran status, because just having veteran status alone puts you in a different category. There's so many diseases and conditions that our veterans suffer from.
Yeah, and the people that you work with, a lot of the Vietnam era people who have come back from overseas, they didn't exactly have the same level of treatment available to them back then that they do now, right? So even issues that maybe could have been caught earlier in their life. They're maybe not getting caught until now when they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and that's, to me, it just doesn't sit right. That it took this long to have someone like yourself who is there now to help them along. But all those years have gone by, and here they are now finally being able to work through some of these issues.
Right. And that internal turmoil, that's very devastating to the health of the veteran as well. So it's really sad to see, because their lives, the way they live their life now is a consequence of how they've lived their life, not only from their military service but after that as well. So
yeah, and dealing with the stresses of combat, the PTSD type of issues that they might have been dealing with, back then, and even not even that far back, but the attitude was sort of just like, we'll suck it up and deal with it. Just be a man, deal with it, that kind of thing. And
man up.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's not the best way to deal with those things. Right.
I know many of our patients, they still have difficulty expressing and talking about it. So it's still very deep and raw to them. And the treatment they received, not medical treatment, but the treatment from the Americans when they came home, and that's very painful.
Right. And I'm very grateful for having served during a time where people were very appreciative of our service, whether they were for the war that we fought in or not. They still respected the military. They still were there at the airports greeting the troops. They were still attending the parades and the services and all the things that were taking place, and they weren't taking issue with the individual soldiers or Marines or airmen,
on them
or spitting on them or beating them up or whatever,
being afraid to wear their uniform, right?
Right, exactly. You could walk out in public wearing your uniform, not being afraid that you're going to get assaulted or, have a crowd of people coming, circling around you. I'm very appreciative of the way that society has evolved to that point. But my gosh, I can only imagine the people coming back from Vietnam who not only just saw literal hell going through that, and then coming back home and being treated like a second-class citizen, being treated like they're lower than dirt, and that to me just doesn't sit right, and it can't have sat right with them either, right? And I'm sure that it contributed to a lot of the issues that they had going forward.
It is
right.
And just a little bit about our program. It is home-based. It is not facility-based. So it's very different, because a lot of our veterans don't live near a VA hospital, so they can't get the treatment that they need. And so what I do is I either talk to them our program is 14 weeks long, and it is all by phone or all by video. So we do the face-to-face by video or by phone, and that's it. So I've found ways to be able, to adapt to that, and also even test them over the phone and test their functionality, test their ability to exercise over the phone or even by video. And it's a great program. And I do want veterans to know that it's out there, because you can get treatment. You don't have to live near a clinic. You don't have to live near a VA to get treatment. And I've had our veterans say, Karen, you've changed my life. And that is the most, inspiring thing for me to hear. But it just makes me feel so good that, they went from here depressed, isolated, to being able to function again, being able to walk their dog again. So it's really amazing.
Yeah, it is. And I know, especially in the last couple of years with the COVID-19 and everything, and there was a lot of restrictions in terms of where people could go and what they could do and all that kind of stuff. And this type of thing being able to be offered over the phone or online through a video call, it really had no impact on that type of service, I would imagine, right? Because everyone is going to be from their home anyways.
Right. And we've actually had outpatient programs contact us because we were the model. We had this going already, and they're saying, "How are you doing this? You know, how is it done, and what do you do?" So yeah, we've kind of paved the way, and it's really we have a program. We don't have many programs on the West Coast. There are a lot of clustered programs in the Midwest and the East Coast. So we're growing, though. We're growing out.
Yeah, but this is something that I would imagine is available to people across this country, no matter where they're located. They can still find a VA hospital in their area that, you know, maybe it's an hour drive away or 2 hours or more to this hospital, but they can still get an appointment with someone like yourself who can work with them over the phone or online, right?
Right. We try to stay regional, like Northern California, but I've had patients in Southern California and Las Vegas before. And so it can work. And I just want our veterans to know there is help out there. And it's all one-on-one. I know there are some programs that they offer Zoom classes, exercise classes. It's a little different because we do the one-on-one, whereas in Zoom, you don't really have those side conversations in a group. But
so what type of activities are you able to do on the phone or online with the people that you see?
So we cover 4 or 5 different domains, and one is exercise. So with exercise, I first do their functional testing. I test their balance, their strength, their aerobic capacity, all over the phone. Their ability to walk over the phone, and then from there, I design an exercise prescription for them, you know, and some just walking room to room, if they have really advanced pulmonary disease, that's all that they can do at first. So, you know, we really tailor it to what the veteran's starting point is. So it really, I have one veteran now, he was in the Marine Corps. He used to lift weights in the Marine Corps, and that's all he wanted to do, but he had a heart attack at 35. So he wasn't sure what he can do, but he's lifting weights again. He's going to be playing basketball soon in a family basketball, you know, weekly tournament, and so excited. Part of it is trying to really dive deep into what gets the veteran excited. You know, what is it? I always say, what is it that you really love to do? Or did you have a hobby? Sometimes they even forget they even had these special interests at one time.
Right. Yeah.
They forget.
That's very true. That is true. I know that from personal experience and from talking to other people that is the case. So I want to get into your book a little bit. Again, the name of the book for the listeners is Athletes and Aprons, the Nutrition Playbook to Break 100. And I'll be honest, when I first read the name of your book, I said to my wife that I know a few people who need a golf playbook to break 100 on the course, right? but this isn't that book. It's not a golf book. It has nothing really necessarily specifically to do with golf. But this is talking about breaking past that century mark, living a healthy lifestyle, able to get up to that 100-year mark in your life. And like I think I said in the beginning of this episode, it's not necessarily just adding the quantity of years, but the quality of the years as well. Mm-hmm. And so tell us about how this playbook can help us avoid some of the common issues that come along with aging.
So, just for it is, and you read a little bit. I approached it from a different angle. It's not a textbook, it's not a cookbook, it's not an exercise book. What the physicians who've read it, they tell me it's a lifestyle guide. It goes into some little bit of mindfulness, but in the first introductory chapters, like you had mentioned, it goes into the foundational science, why we age. Because once we understand why we age, then we can take action steps to change the way we live. Most of 6 out of 10 Americans have some type of lifestyle disease. That means they are suffering from something as a result of their lifestyle. So cardiovascular disease, lung disease, and dementia too. People think about dementia. They think, well, when it's my time, it's my time. But that's not true. That's not true. And all the studies point to the association between lifestyle and dementia.
And we were talking before we started recording, and you mentioned how you intentionally wrote this in an easy to understand format, you mentioned some of the science behind it, but it's not a science textbook. You don't go into the super technical things like that. It reads like a book from the parts that I've read so far, and it reads in a enjoyable, easy to understand format. And when I first started reading it, and I saw a few of the words were on there, and you're talking about some of the cells and things like that. I'm like, okay, where's she going with this? But then it was relatable. It was useful information, and you explain things in a way that just makes sense. And it's not like I had to really dive too far back into my high school biology class to try to understand what it was that you're trying to explain here, right? So that to me was very encouraging, and it made me want to stick with it and read more and learn more about what's going on with the whole process. And like you said, you start off by explaining what causes the aging process to take place, right? So tell us a little bit about the book and kind of what people can expect from it.
Okay. So the way my approach to it, first, I was very involved in sports. So that's why you'll hear all my little sports comments. It has a little more of a sports speak to it. And it's all about being able to play longer, being able to not only live longer, but I always reference it as being able to play longer. Play, if you're a golfer, being able to play, when you're 80s, 90s and beyond. So just to kind of take it back a little, when I was working in a hospital setting or with the cardiac patients, we had this big whiteboard in the cardiac rehab room. And I took it upon myself to have a topic of the week, and I'd write bullet points. And at the end of the program, which was 3 months long, at the exit interview, I'd asked our patients, what is it that you like the most about cardiac rehab? And I thought they'd say something like, hey, I feel like I'm healthier than I was before I had a heart attack. I'm better. And I thought that's what they would say. And they said, your whiteboards. That was their favorite thing. And the fact that they thought it was a fun class. He says, we thought you're funny. So that kind of made me think, since most of my patients are men, and I said, wow, they're willing to learn and they're willing to read, but whatever is thrown at them, it needs to be friendly, reader friendly, needs to be concise. Can't be overly complicated, and it has to have some humor in it. So that's how I came to write it the way I did. So.
Yeah, and it definitely does have some humor. I think that just in the first couple of pages, that it already had me chuckling at some of the little things. I forget specifically what it was that got me going, but there was just a few things in there that it captured my attention because of the humor that was used in it, and it just drew me in. So this playbook, right, is something that can help with your overall health. Everything from the cognitive issues that you're talking about, like your brain function and heart disease, weight gain, muscle loss, agility, all these things that typically you think of as when someone is getting older. These are all the things that decline or increase
Yes.
depending on what the weight gain.
Yeah.
You typically see that going up, right? Um,
Hmm.
and I was always curious about this. As people start living longer, there's no doubt that we're adding to the quantity of the years that people live. Right? We've seen that the average age life expectancy has gone up over time, and but when the last years of our life are spent cooped up in a nursing home, and uh, I always just wondered, are we really adding to the quality of the life that we're living? So this playbook, it shows people how to add that quality functional years to their lives, and as opposed to just adding the quantity of years, but you're stuck in bed or you're stuck in a wheelchair and
Right.
you can't do the functional things that you would like to be doing, right?
Right. And I'm so passionate about the mission behind this whole book, living how to live longer without growing older. That is the mission.
Yep.
And it's because my entire career has spent in cardio rehab and cardiopulmonary rehab, and seeing the change, seeing how even 4 weeks of intensive lifestyle change can have an impact on the quality of life. And I meet people after they've had their heart attack, after they've had open heart surgery or a heart transplant, and so starting from that point and seeing that, yeah, they can get better. And it's just a matter of knowing how, understanding why they are in the position that they're in and why they have aches and pains all the time. And oftentimes I will ask, well, tell me about what you eat every day. And that is very revealing about.
Oh, for sure, because the person who uh, doesn't exercise and is eating Oreos and Doritos and drinking, Coke or Mountain Dew or whatever, as opposed to fresh fruits and vegetables and drinking lots of water and that type of thing, they're going to have two totally different outcomes.
Oh, yeah.
Those two people, right? So, but it is interesting to see uh, what people think of as being healthy,
Hmm.
and as opposed to what actually it means to be healthy.
Yeah.
You hear about people sometimes who they eat a lot of breads and pastas and things like that, which in moderation is fine, but then they're like, oh, I don't understand, why do I continue gaining all this weight? And it's like, I thought I was eating healthy, but really
Yes.
it's not, right?
And this isn't a diet. And I say this in the book that diets make you fat. I mean, those are the things that
Yes.
drive you to, eat and eat excessively, because people would not be overweight if they were eating for due to physiological hunger. It's that emotional eating that is causing the weight gain, causing those emotional binges. And a lot of our veterans suffer from that because of the psychological stress that they're under, and that's not, oh, and it's suppressed. One of the things I said just in the years I've taught is that, in order to combat emotional eating, you first have to recognize that you're doing it. Most people don't. And so keeping a diary of, not everything you eat, but like when you have a certain craving, I'm craving those Oreos that are sitting in my cabinet over there. What is it that you're feeling at that moment? And chart that down. Where are you sitting? Are you sitting on the sofa? There are all these little triggers that people don't realize. And what they say to me is, I'm so weak. I'm such a failure. I told myself I'm never going to eat those Oreos again, but I do. And they don't quite understand what's going on, that there's a lot underlying that's causing those actions. I think a lot of people do know, well, the healthier things are the fruits and vegetables,
Right.
but why do they not eat them all the time? And I think and that was the point too about the book, is to understand why these foods are contributing to aging, because once they understand that, and people tell me that, oh, now I understand, and now it makes sense. So maybe next time I'm not going to be so prone to want to grab that, because that's going to cause my wrinkles.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so I think the best part of this book is that it talks about the why and the what is the good stuff, and not necessarily
Eat this, eat that.
yeah, exactly. Not like a definite prescribed, this is your meal plan for the week, but it's in general, the green leafy vegetables, and the fruits, and the things like that. It tells you in general, this is kind of what you're looking for, but like you said, not in a diet format, because diets, you're right, they don't work. They call them yo-yo diets for a reason, because your weight goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And
see it all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to try this. And it's usually because they're looking for some quick fix. But those quick fixes are not fixing the problem.
It's that temporary thing where yes, you might lose weight in the short term, but long term, you're going to go back to your old ways of eating, and you're going to end up gaining the weight. If not gaining all of that back, possibly then even more than where you started, and that's not where you want to be. So, looking at the little changes that you can make in your diet and your exercise and your overall well-being, creates a much more sustainable way of staying healthy, right? And I think that's something that this book does pretty well. One thing I wanted to clarify too is that the title of this book is Athletes in Aprons. That's part of the title, right? Now, we're not all professional athletes. Probably very few of the people listening to this podcast would identify themselves as an athlete. They may have played a sport when they were younger. Obviously, if they were in the military, they were athletic to some degree, because the physical fitness requirements and all that kind of stuff. And even if they still play a sport in their adult years, they may not identify necessarily as an athlete. So you do a good job of defining what an athlete is in this context, as far as the context of this book. What is that definition, and how can people see themselves as an athlete?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I define what an athlete is, and it's not defined by the uniform you wear, by how many points you score, how much money you make as an professional athlete. It all has to do with perseverance. If you have that drive, if you persevere, if you want to be better than you were yesterday, you are an athlete. So people that have cancer and they're striving and fighting and they're persevering, they are an athlete. The whole athletics club, it's not so exclusive, but it's more inclusive. It includes the people with cancer, includes the people with cardiovascular disease, includes the people that are 50 and over and striving to be better and healthier. Those are the people that are true athletes, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does make sense, because if you look at any professional athlete, whether it's professional basketball or baseball, hockey, football, whatever the sport is, they all have worked hard to improve themselves, to get better day after day after day. They're going to the gym, they're watching what they eat, they're going to the trainers, they're doing the work, they're putting in the work to improve themselves and get to be the best version of themselves that they can. They're practicing their craft, their sport. They're doing it over and over and over. They're not sitting back and just resting and letting life happen to them, right? They're putting in that effort. And so I think you made a good example with like a cancer patient, someone who is diagnosed with cancer, and that's not an easy thing to get through. They're going to have to struggle. They're going to have to fight to get over that cancer, whether it involves a surgery or chemotherapy or changing their diet and changing, all of that stuff. It could involve all of that stuff, but it is that persistence. They could just as easily just say, you know what, I had a good run and I quit, and this is it. This is the end of the road for me. That type of person probably wouldn't be labeled as an athlete in your book, right? That type of person is the type of person who isn't being that persistent, but the person who's showing up day after day, putting in the work, fighting for that better result, that person is the athlete. And it's there's a very close parallel, whether you pick up a bat or a ball or a racket or a club, whatever the thing is, whether you do that or not, really doesn't matter. There's another way of looking at being an athlete. And I think you even mentioned in your book, if you
have a body,
if you have a body, right? If you go swimming, or it could be hunting or fishing, or, anything that you're doing, that could be, a sport as well. So yeah, anything really. So we're all athletes in one way or another, right?
And labels are pretty meaningful. Like for my in cardiac rehab, I call them my cardio athletes. They're working hard every day, and you can. When I first used that term, and their eyes lit up. I mean, they had these big, and I had quite a few veterans in this one particular group, because this was an outpatient hospital setting, and their eyes lit up, and they were no longer patients who are pretty much sick, and just, you think of a patient as someone that's laying in a hospital bed, really,
right? But
you call them cardio athletes, and it's just like, hey, what do you want from me next?
And it's, a lot of that is just the mindset too, because if you think of yourself as a patient, like that picture that you have of someone sick in a hospital bed with the tubes coming out of them, and all the gown and all that kind of stuff, that is a pretty depressing picture to have painted, right?
And you kind of think of the patient as someone that just who is not proactive, but is just following doctor's orders. And so it's complete opposite of what we're talking about is the athlete.
Yeah, the athlete is the person who's being proactive and getting out there, trying to get ahead of whatever it is that they're into, whether it's recovering from an illness or an injury or whatever, or getting better at a sport or their career or whatever. It's that type of person. So,
and it doesn't matter how old you are. And one of the physicians that read this book, and he said, this should be required reading for some of these 20, 30-year-olds, not waiting till you're 50, 60, but to start this early. And I actually had a fellow come to me, and he says, I'm going to read your book because I'm feeling really old. And he's 30 years old. And I said, well, go have at it, because that's the perfect time to start, really.
Right.
It was affecting his golf game. He was concerned because he was feeling old, and his golf game was not as good as he once was.
Well, and it's good that people do start off earlier, trying to give themselves that healthier life through their 20s, 30s, 40s, and beyond. But what about the people who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, who are now realizing, I'm not as young as I once was, and things aren't working quite the way that they used to?
Yes.
Is it too late for people who are that old, or
absolutely,
do they still have hope?
Absolutely not, because there is, I'd say most of our veterans that are in our program are 60s, 70s, even 80s, and they show improvement as long as they put in the effort. Try to eat more. Sometimes I just have to start gently. I said, okay, so because we set goals every week under each domain. And I said, okay, for nutrition goal, how's adding 2 vegetables a day? Is that doable? and then they start, and then they realize. I had this one veteran who said he was so depressed, all he did was sit in his lazy boy. And the more depressed you are, you're really not motivated to move. And he said, I was just sinking deeper and deeper until you called. And having someone kind of give you that motivation, give you those assignments. I know veterans are very mission driven, so they get their assignment. This is, and we come to those agreements under the care plan together, because I want it to be doable. But yeah, after he got started, I mean, he's like a whole new person. And he said, my life has changed. He's not even finished with the program yet, but he goes, I'm moving, I'm walking, I feel good. So even though he has some other conditions, plaguing him, he feels so much better. His spirit is much more uplifted. So it's amazing what a little better nutrition and some better exercise. I say nutrition and exercise are like 2 wheels on a bicycle. If one is faulty or inadequate, you end up with a dysfunctional bicycle. So they work together.
Yeah, and it works for the overall well-being of these people, right? It's not just the physical health, but as you mentioned, with the person who was depressed and sitting at home and not really encouraged to get up off the couch and do anything.
And COVID also made it worse.
I'm sure. Yeah. And that COVID made a lot of things worse for a lot of people, but it also helped improve his mental state as well. And, that's a very important thing, because without the mental state being there to want to persevere and want to have that drive to keep going, then, a lot of this is just not going to stick with people. But when you improve on that mental state, then you start thinking to yourself, okay, well, maybe there is something else that I can do here to make some improvements and have a happier, healthier life.
And that is so important, because the research does show that depression causes brain changes in the brain, atrophy, shrinkage. That means dementia. So, seeing these links, it's real important. So important to kind of get out of that funk, and exercise is one way, and eating well is another way. What you eat is, becomes a part of you. And that's real important to make sure all those things that you put in count.
I know for one thing, when my time on earth is up, I want to be sliding into the grave going 100 miles an hour with my hair on fire saying, man, that was one hell of a ride. I don't want to be the stereotypical old guy that we were talking about before who's being helped out of his wheelchair or hobbling along and
needs help going to the bathroom,
all that kind of stuff. That doesn't interest me at all. But what's the first step that someone like myself, I'm 40 years old right now. How can I take that first step to ensure that I'm healthy 40, 50, even 60 years from now?
It's reading the book, understanding all those mechanisms that cause aging, and what even medications. I don't know if you got to that chapter where I list all the medications. The science does show that these medications that are so common, I see them every day with our veterans that they're taking. That's causing aging. That's causing damage to the mitochondria. So understanding you want to be as clean as possible. Try and get off as many medications as possible. Blood pressure is something that's very manageable. And also understanding why your arteries get stiff. And one of those, and that's one of my chapters about sugar. I mean, sugar is one of the worst things, that if you can get all that added sugar out of your diet, that's going to help with the whole aging process. When people say, oh, I wake up, I'm stiff and sore. Well, that's what sugar does. Sugar binds with protein. The most prevalent and abundant protein in the body is collagen. Collagen is that stuff that keeps you from wrinkling on the outside, but also doing all the damage on the inside, because it causes stiffening in the arteries, so the arteries can't contract and expand and get a lot of blood through. So you're not getting good blood through in the brain. You're not getting blood through the heart. Your joints, your tendons, those are all made of collagen. So that becomes stiff. You become a stiff, aging human.
Well, I don't want to give too much of the book away because
that's okay.
Because I do really want people to go out and get a copy of this book. The book, again, for people, it's Athletes and Aprons, the Nutrition Playbook to Break 100. I have the copy of the book right here. It's really important, I think, for people to understand what's going on when they put that certain thing in their body. What is it doing to you, right? Like you said, the sugar. When the sugar enters your body, it's not just that thing that tastes good, that sweet, candy or cookies, or it's not just that. It's also doing something to the inner workings of your body. So I hope that people will go out and get a copy of the book. I want to give you a chance to let people know where they can go to find out more about you and also to get a copy of your book.
So the book is available on Amazon and also Barnes & Noble. My website is Owoc, OOWOC.com, and that's where I post a lot of my videos from the TV segments that we do. There's a little bit more information about the book, even a sneak peek, and about why I do what I do, what's driven me to where I am today. So that's all on my website.
Yeah, and I will have links to all of that, your website and the book, on the show notes. So anyone who is interested in taking a look and finding out more information from that, definitely check out the show notes. You can click through and get right to where you need to go. KRON, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm looking forward to getting more into the book and learning all the things that I've been doing wrong all these years, and how I can improve myself.
And the book has a lot of practicality to it. So I do try, I don't know if you notice, I do try and tie a couple recipes, because there are some recipes in there that tie to that particular topic. So you said, oh, okay, I need to eat more of this particular color because of this, and then I could go to this recipe. And then I also list what brands. I'm not affiliated with any companies, but I put in my favorites and things that I've already KO approved. So that's the most valuable thing. Some of the people that have read it said to me, they said, because it's not just putting the information out there, but now I know where to go, and I don't have to do all my own research. I just go to the Stock Your Locker chapter, and I'll look at what to buy. So.
Yeah, and that's another useful thing, is all the useful ingredients and the foods and everything that you can get from this book. It makes it easier so that you're not scrambling to come up with the recipes on your own, and it helps to figure out what those things are, so you can, like you said, get started, and you can always modify it to your own likings and tastes and needs, as time goes on. But at least it gives you a good starting point to kickstart your health journey.
Yes, absolutely. And it's never too early, and it's never too late to start. Well,
thank you again, KRON. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. I think this will help out a lot of people, and hopefully give them more quality years later on in their lives.
And if you have any questions, I'm accessible. My email is on my website, so I'm always happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Excellent. So we'll direct people to your website and hopefully get people the answers that they're looking for. Absolutely. Thanks again.
Thank you, Scott. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On podcast. If you want to check out more episodes or learn more about the show, you can visit our website, driveonpodcast.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Drive On Podcast.